lets the sea lull him into a sense of security is in very grave danger. Hammond Ennis, novelist.
So yeah, I think the most important thing you have to understand about oceans is that it can be unpredictable. It's very unpredictable on the open ocean. So both if you're whether you're on the surface or whether you're deeper
Mhm.
under it, it can be quite unpredictable. You never know when you'll kind of be up against. But especially if you're starting out from the surface, just the surface alone, like if you're just going out into the open ocean before you dive down or anything like that, just the surface alone can be quite daunting situation to see. So for example, like if you're looking at the Indian Ocean is the arguably the most has the most dangerous ocean waters on the planet. Uh, I know it doesn't seem like it probably doesn't seem like it at first because it's kind of out of all the oceans the Indian Ocean is not very it's the area doesn't span as large as say the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean, but the Indian Ocean, because it's actually a lot of it is it's near the tropics, so there's a lot of warm weather going on there, and because temperature kind of it affects the water temperature as well. It makes it very vulnerable to like climate changes and things such as monsoons or tsunamis, cyclones, things like this. Because these warm temperatures has it has an effect on basically moisture, and it helps in production of storms, and it also affects the wind speed. So it can be quite windy there, and it creates all of these storms and such that a lot of sailors sometimes can might encounter. Um, yeah, the second one, if you want to look at the Atlantic Ocean, again, it's not as severe, it's not as dangerous as the Indian Ocean overall, but it can still be affected by coastal winds. So the winds that are blowing from across the Atlantic, it can result in some changing temperatures of the ocean surface as well. And again, yeah, these varying temperatures have these winds, so it's sort of it's sort of like the perfect recipe for storms. So you can create a lot of storms and lots of strong ocean currents as well. Um, the winds can create a large current. These currents can be huge. They can easily, swallow even like the largest ships. You see like those maybe like tankers or the container ships out in the ocean. Like those are pretty huge, but still they can be affected. They can be dwarfed by these waves. So
Wow.
um, it really gives you a little scale of just how large these things can get. Um, and then these winds and waves, even if they don't completely swallow the ships, they can still damage like their hull and various parts of the ship. So it can be quite, it can definitely be quite intimidating. Um, and then these winds can also create these low pressure winds. They have these areas where they converge, and these winds, when they meet in from opposite directions, they can create these things with convectional thunderstorms. And these storms can actually appear just out of thin air almost. Like you can have a clear day where nothing's happening. You think that it's a very calm wind, very calm seas, and then all of a sudden you can have these storms coming because these winds sort of meet and can create them almost spontaneously. So these storms can affect the way a ship moves, right? Not just damage it because the wind and it can blow the ship in a certain direction or certain way. So it's oftentimes sailors have to make decisions quickly on the spot because when they encounter one of these they have to, just sometimes their forecasts are inaccurate. They don't predict these things like when they're about to happen. So oftentimes sailors have to, make decisions quickly on the spot. Um, so these are just some of the dangers of the ocean. Just at the surface level. It just tells you just a bit about how dangerous they can be. Yeah.
Thank you, Edward. They're just fascinating. We know over the last 2 weeks or so, we've learned a lot about the depths of the ocean and how deep you can go. And we learned and seen tons of demonstrations about implosion and what that looks like. So help me understand when you see a vessel that can literally just be twisted like a pop can, just literally twisted, yet you have life and organisms that are able to live at these depths. Can you talk about that? Because I just think, how does this marine life survive?
Yeah, definitely. So, if you look at these, the marine animals, right? They don't seem like very, they're not enormous. They're not, really, they don't seem very durable. They don't have these shells or anything to protect them. So,
Oh,
I know it can seem a bit strange at first, but I think the important thing is like once you understand sort of like the concepts of the pressure and how it works, it all makes sense later on. So pressure is, when we talk about pressure, we're talking about, we measure them in atmosphere. So one atmosphere is basically the pressure that we experience like on land. So that's sort of, the baseline sort of pressure that we experience. So it's one atmosphere, one ATM. And then as you go further down, it's like there's it's roughly one every 10 meters that you go down in depth in the ocean, you add about one ATM of pressure. So, for example, where the Titanic is about 3,800 meters in depth. So pressure there is roughly 380 ATM. So 380 times what we experience on land. And that's quite a bit, right? That's definitely quite a bit. And if we go even further down, right, we said that the ocean can reach down to almost 11,000 meters. So at that point, you just it's uh it's you know you it's quite a bit. It's definitely that's saying that's just very pressurized. It's an understatement, definitely. Um, and then and yet you have these organisms that are able to live down there to almost that depth, not to that depth maybe, but a little bit above that, around a couple thousand meters, no problem.
oh,
I think, but the thing is, because the reason they can do that is because they don't have these gas filled spaces. So spaces like our lungs that that are sort of they can be filled with gas, be filled with air, and these are things that we need, obviously, as humans, and as for a lot of other animals, we need to survive. And these gas filled spaces are basically because they're filled with gas, and there's empty space inside. These would be affected by pressure. So if you have a huge amount of pressure outside, you can imagine it will affect the space inside of these gas filled spaces. Like if they're empty, the pressures will collapse them. Sort of like what happened with the submersible. So like you have empty space, water collapses because of this extreme pressure. But the thing with these animals that live down at those depths is that they don't have these gas filled spaces. They don't have these chambers. Instead, most of them consist purely of water, which is actually incompressible. So because they're mostly filled with water, outside of them is also water. So like at that point, their pressure is pretty much equal to the pressure outside of them. And if there is no pressure difference, right, nothing's going to happen to you. So that's basically what it is. They are filled with water, such as the sea cucumber that is presented on the slide. They don't have any of these gas-filled areas, right? There's no empty spaces inside of them. So like the sea cucumber, like a bunch of the smaller microorganisms, they don't have any of these spaces, so they're not really affected by these depths. Some of them can even migrate a couple 1,000 meters a day. So sometimes they do these vertical migrations to get prey, and sometimes to escape from the light. they can do this easily. They're not really affected by the pressure difference. And then they're pretty much immune to these pressure differences. But one thing is that they can be affected by is their metabolic rates, because at large pressures, these metabolic rates can actually be sped up. So when you, for example, take them out of the water for examination or for research purposes, they can experience some metabolic sort of issues because they have difficulty adjusting that. But nothing, pressure wise, they're totally fine. Yeah.
Sea cucumbers. So if anybody has never seen one, we have a picture right here of sea cucumbers. That's the first for me. So thank you for sharing that. So what are the real dangers for people underwater? What are the real dangers, just so people understand? Because we actually have seen something that I think was very eye-opening to all of us. And can you just share some of those? Because I know it was eye-opening to me that submersible, we're being told, just really imploded. And you just wouldn't think that something like that would happen.
Yeah. So the issue with the submersible and with just about any type of other danger that humans sort of might experience underwater has to do with pressure, right? So when people think about the dangers that the man faces underwater, they pretty much just think of pressure. I mean, because at those depths, I mean, right, besides the animals down there that may pose a threat, the thing about water itself is mainly probably what people will think about is just about the pressure. But the first thing actually, and this is actually the most common, even though it seems kind of strange, right? Because you would think that people will be prepared for this kind of thing. It's drowning. So drowning, you would think that, people who go out to the open ocean to dive or whatever, they, you would think that they're experienced, swimmers, and they wouldn't, they know they wouldn't be risking their lives by drowning, but it's actually the highest occurring cause of fatalities. So drowning, it's not usually due to the divers not being able to swim or anything like that. No, it's usually due to two things. One is diver panic. So that's basically when you have an out of air situation. For example, your oxygen tank, there's a malfunction with it, or you have some other sort of health emergency, right? That's not related to the water. So for example, you have a heart attack, or you have you have a stroke or something. You have some sort of medical emergency in the water that can result in drowning. But these cases basically, right, they can render the diver unconscious, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
So that's why people always recommend that, for divers, they should have a diving partner, or some be part of a group. They shouldn't be down there alone, because these things can, they can be unpredictable again. So so this kind of thing can always happen. Um, another common challenge that men might face underwater is this thing called decompression sickness, otherwise known as DCS. This is basically when you have compressed air. So you breathe air. Obviously, you have an oxygen tank when you dive or you're underwater. So you breathe a certain amount of compressed air at a certain depth. But in the case that you breathe too much of it, you may have extra nitrogen that is absorbed by your body at that depth. You don't notice a problem until you get back up to the surface, because if you have absorbed too much nitrogen, the difference in pressure when you get back up creates these nitrogen bubbles. And then these bubbles, you don't really notice them again until you get up to the surface, because they're made from the difference in pressure. So when you get up to the surface, and then you have these bubbles in your tissues, they can cause a lot of pain. If
Really?
you don't get them treated, they can end up causing nerve and tissue damage, and sometimes in worst case scenarios, even death. So this is something that people have to watch out for. You have to make sure that you don't, that you don't uh, breathe too much of the of compressed air. You don't make sure you don't rise up to the surface too quickly, or this kind of thing can happen. And another thing is this event called arterial air embolism. So this is basically a blockage of an artery, but it's the same, like it's similar to the previous thing, the DCS, because it's also caused by bubbles forming in an artery. Here you have the bubbles that form again on ascent, going back up to the surface. And then obviously these bubbles can block blood flow. So that can be a bit of an issue. It's usually caused by pulmonary barotrauma. So it's like it's damage to the lungs again due to the difference in pressure. And it's the pressure outside of your body versus and the pressure in the lungs. So for example, if you go up too quickly, the air in your lungs can expand too quickly, and this kind of thing can create these bubbles that sort of block your arteries and can constrict and that can restrict blood flow. So this is another thing to watch out for.
Oh,
Um, and finally, there's another situation known as nitrogen narcosis. This one isn't exactly fatal like the others. Like they can be, like the previous ones can be fatal if you don't, get treatment immediately. But this one isn't really like it's not life-threatening, but it's basically a feeling of drunkenness. So if you're going down too deep, you may have this feeling of drunkenness because again, it has to do with the pressure difference. It can get, this sort of feeling can affect a number of things. So basically, it can result in a deduction or a reduction in reasoning, decision making. It can lead to poor motor function. It's basically like how you feel when you're drunk, except that here you're like almost 100 meters underwater. So it just it can be quite it can cause you to make some poor decisions. So yeah, these are all things that just you have to watch out for. And of course, if you're diving in, for example, like in vehicles or in submersibles or submarines, if you want to go in deeper depths, there's always a chance of a malfunction. There's always a chance of, like this example, if you have issues with the hull itself, you have issues with the body, that can cause problems. You can have any sort of malfunction in these vehicles. So, um, there's a number of risks that you definitely have to keep in mind when you're going down there. Yeah.
well, you made a good point that, certainly with exploration, we wouldn't have many of the advances that we have if we didn't have exploration. But obviously with all exploration comes risk. And we've seen, the ultimate sacrifice when explorers take huge risks. Do you think that people really understand that it's a risk every time you deep dive, or you go down into the ocean? It's a risk. And can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think most people unfortunately probably don't realize this. They probably have a difficult time comprehending the type of risk, just how dangerous the oceans really can be. I think and the main reason for that just like it's just the same as why a lot of people don't take climate change seriously, right? It's like no matter how much you tell them about it, you truly drill the idea into their heads about, just why it's so serious. But at the end of the day, people just don't take this sort of thing seriously because they just don't have they just don't have the experience. So I'm not, I'm not saying they should experience this sort of thing, because some of the stuff, like the events that happen in the submersible, these are things that right, you're not going to get a second chance. Then you don't want to experience
Right.
these things, of course. But again, still, it's like it's the same concept like with climate change. People don't take these things seriously because they they can't experience, or they don't think they've experienced that at least. right? They feel that this isn't something that I know, right? You're just talking about this. This all just sounds like stories to me, right? They all sound like stories. I've never experienced it. The people I know haven't experienced it. So, so they have a difficult time just, understanding what it's like unless they've been placed in that sort of situation.
Do you foresee any changes in ocean or sea exploration as a result of this? I mean, will we maybe be a better equipped society because of this?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I think that even though deep sea exploration as a whole will probably continue because overall their safety record is pretty good. I think James Cameron himself recently stated in an interview that there hasn't really been any sort of like accidents like this, and not to mention fatalities, since 1960. So it's actually a pretty good track record. But nonetheless, I think that at least I hope that this incident definitely is a wake up call and proves itself to be a wake up call for other organizations out there, other companies that wants to start their own sort of marine exploration or marine research sort of program, because the unfortunate thing about this incident was that it was a tragedy that could have definitely been avoided.
Mhm.
Because because when we're talking about this Titan submersible, there were actually a number of experts that had warned OceanGate about some of the issues that they've seen, all the way dating back to 2018. So, for example, they talked about a number of negative outcomes that could have happened, anything from minor to catastrophic, like what happened here. Um, but there was a problem at the end of the day with oversight and with the adherence to industry accepted safety guidelines that caused this incident. Um, Most companies out there, thankfully, don't. They still follow a carefully laid out framework with certification, verification, and then finally oversight. So you have these third party companies that come and they do these inspections. They send engineers that are specifically they've been trained to do these sort of inspections on vehicles, submersible submarines, and then they certify you to use these vehicles. But that's part of the typical sort of track that they go. But unfortunately, in this case, OceanGate did not do this. They didn't feel that it was necessary to go through this process. Their defense was that it was simply because this is new, right? So the stuff that they're doing here is new. They believe that this is an experimentation. They are trying new things. So, for example, the joystick controller, right? That was something, right? I mean, come on, as a really, like, seriously, like, I mean, and then them using what's it called, carbon fiber as a whole, right? As the whole of the submersible. I mean, these are things that have not been tried before, but that doesn't mean that that they shouldn't be certified, that they shouldn't be inspected.
Yes,
But that's exactly what OceanGate said. They said that these things are new. So they don't, regulations don't apply to these things. They don't apply to the Titan submersible. And because of this, I think that some regulations probably are going to have to change. Probably going to have to adapt on the changing nature of technology. And I think concerns like the ones that were said by the experts earlier should always be taken seriously. There was one, I think he was an engineer who worked at OceanGate himself. He brought up these concerns as well, and he was fired for it. So I think these things, I mean, have to be taken seriously, and you certainly shouldn't. Why would you fire someone who is actually bringing up a valid safety concern? So I think these things are definitely should be things that have to change. there's been so many issues before regarding the Titan submersible, like mechanical issues, communication issues, battery issues, external hull issues. There's been damage done before to the hull already, and yet they've done nothing to fix it. So this is again, this is something that it's
Tragic.
unfortunate because people lost their lives over something that totally could have been avoided.
Well, I can just say this is my own opinion. If someone had told me that I needed to get into a submersible and that a pinhole would be a breach, I would have been done then. Just a pinhole. And I think for someone to just sign the releases that they were asked to sign, and they clearly signed them, but they trusted, what they were signing. And that says a lot about external regulatory bodies. Because if you're asking the company itself, should we trust you? Sometimes it's a lot easier to say, we have an outside company who's vouching for us and saying these things are safe. It's just tragic. I always give my guests the last word. Edward, you are always so interesting. I have to tell you, I could listen to you all day. And I hope that our guests have found your intellect and your insight just formidable itself, because I knew when this incident all started unraveling, I said, I'm going to call Edward because I know he'll be able to explain in layman terms some of these things that are not as sensationalized because people want clicks and likes. So I appreciate you actually giving us real-time research from the perspective of marine biologists about what we should be looking at. So what are the last parting thoughts that you think the audience, we should leave with them?
I think that from everything that we've looked at today, and from hopefully people have looked into a bit about the recent submersible incident. I think the most important thing is that people should really just I know it can be difficult because of the reasons that I said earlier, that people will have a difficult time like being comprehending what I've been saying today, but I think people should try to really try their best to understand that the sea is overall a largely unexplored space with a lot of hidden dangers. You can't, unfortunately, yes, you can't really know them until you've been there, but like the thing with the submersible, you don't get a second chance, right? Some of these
Yeah.
things, if you experience them, then it'll be too late. So hopefully people, can take a minute to really just hopefully digest what we've looked at today, and just take the submersible issue as sort of a lesson, right? It's not just for companies out there. It's not for other marine exploration or marine companies hoping to send your own submersible. It's for everybody, because it's not just the thing with the submersible. It could be any of those issues I mentioned earlier, right? These things, um, because the good thing is that even though these issues are, they're definitely very serious, and usually right, if you experience them, then that's it. That could be it for you. But the good thing is, all of these so far, all of the issues I talked about so far, all of the things regarding submersible submarines, diving, there are all regulations and like rules that already exist to prevent these things from happening, luckily. So again, I think that it's important that people be able to think and act proactively when it comes to these things. I hope the viewers out there do take this as an opportunity to really have a bit of an understanding of what the ocean is like, and remember to always go out and to prepare yourselves, because there are ways you can prepare yourselves. There are ways you can avoid these sort of tragedies, and because at the end of the day, safety is always first, right? It's always the first priority, because right, if you don't have safety, then what's the point of anything else, right?
Wow.
So these things exist. So I think, right, these rules and regulations exist. So you should take advantage of them and really, just think ahead next time you decide to go out and do some exploration.
Well, Edward Zhang, I want to thank you for coming on Tab Talks, for unraveling what I think for many has been a very traumatic turn of events, that hopefully people will learn from that and will be better because of that. Because we've certainly glamorized our oceans. Typically when you see oceans, you see beaches, you see fun, you see waves, you see, but there's a dark side to this. And I hope that any future explorers out there heeds and takes caution that you only get one chance to make a major mistake like this. And hopefully we'll see regulations that kind of regulate some of this thrill seeking, because ultimately we had 5 individuals that paid the ultimate price for that. So I want to thank you, Edward. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Nancy.